I was asked to give a critique, I suppose, of the McDonagh Junction shopping centre in Kilkenny. I was conservation officer at the time. It went through the planning process about 7 years ago now. It's open about 3. As an architect, I think I had an urban design hat as much as a conservation hat, so there's a lot of that in it. I might be the sacrificial. I think there's a phrase, every party needs a good hanging or something like that, but some of the planning policies that a shopping centre is founded on will run counter to Connor's comments earlier. I also touch on, I suppose, what David mentioned, which I think is very interesting, is private management of the public realm, which of course the shopping centre is. And whereas I think before I might have thought that wasn't a good thing. In fact, cooperation between public and private in the public realm seems to me to be the way forward. So I've titled it Conservation and Development in the sense that we want both. So therefore that suggests we're going to have to balance different objectives. Those objectives I see as land use objectives, urban design objectives, conservation objectives, mainly from the planning authority viewpoint. And for a developer, of course, economic viability. The contribution of historic structures in this case was the 1841 Union Workhouse and the redundant railway buildings from the 1850s. These now provide accommodation for new uses, mainly retail, and I think more importantly, they provide the backdrop to new public spaces. I've no axe to grind one way or the other. I wasn't on the design team in any way. I was with the local authority at the time, so it's a kind of a warts and all account of how it's worked out. You may be in part enthused or in part offended by some of what was done. McDonagh Junction refers to the fact that Kilkenny is a spur off the Waterford to Dublin rail line, and Tomás McDonagh was, of course, one of the 1916 rebels. He was executed, but he had been a teacher in Kilkenny, in St. Kieran's College. Now, just to put us in context, this is the street map of Kilkenny. I highlighted in orange there the retail core, which is essentially the high street, the medieval town, whereas McDonagh Junction is up here at the top of John Street. Retail is along the high street in a fairly linear pattern, and you cross the bridge, you go up to the railway station up along John Street, which is the way out to Dublin. So what's wrong with that? That's all the way it's always been. But the planning strategy is to create more of a loop and to, I suppose, complete the two linear walks with something that connects across the top there. So McDonagh Junction, highlighted with the yellow oval circle, is seen as a key thing at the top of John Street to draw people along. And then the black arrow here I've shown is a new road now just approved by Bord Pleanála, which will allow this loop to be completed. It will open up the Smithwick's Brewery site there, which is earmarked for closure, and also the livestock mart site up there. The marts have moved to the edge of town. Now, there's been quite a polarised reaction to the new road proposal. It's changing, as it were, the medieval street pattern of the town, but that's the strategy to extend the retail offer of the town. And there's a sort of an inner wheel strategy involving a new footbridge over the river. Thanks. And a sort of cultural quarter based on County Hall, the Evans Asylum as the Butler Art Gallery, and a new library. Now, this is Kilkenny in the 1842 map. See the castle at the bottom there, and up at the top in the open fields is before the railway arrived, the site, and there is the Union Workhouse up at the top. Now the workhouse is a very efficient machine, I always thought, for dealing with the destitute. You arrived at the front there, up at the top. Families were split up. You came down the centre if you were admitted. Women one side, men the other in dormitories. There was a woman's yard, girls' yard, men's yard, boys' yard. A child of two, a male child of two, would be taken and sent over to the men's side. At the back is the infirmary. The 4 yards there were for lunatics, idiots, asylums, lunatics, idiots, and imbeciles. And there's a 4th one at the very end, and there's the morgue. There were 2 basic types. Kilkenny was the larger one here, which had the 3-storey dormitory blocks. The men's yard here. There were about 136 workhouses built very quickly. A lot of the Kilkenny one was gone. Government offices were built in the 90s, I think, and it took out most of this side of it. And in fact, the developer of McDonagh is very sort of, likes to comment about how they've done such a good job with their piece, whereas the state blithely demolished a lot of it not so very long ago. During the course of the construction, there was a unrecorded mass burial discovered with 970 bodies. So the social significance of this site is, of course, very, very big. And there's a small memorial to the dead, and they're reinterred within the centre. The other buildings of significance were the railway buildings here in orange, the goods shed and the old terminus. The line used to continue through to Castlecomer to the coal mines, but that has stopped. So there is the old terminus. You can imagine that the tracks used to span across the road there and continue. To the right of that, you see the old redundant platform and screen wall. This will become phase 2 of the development, hopefully. It used to be that because Kilkenny was a spur, your train came into Kilkenny off the main line, the engine had to decouple and come around, and then there was a run of tracks needed for that, which are now redundant, and they have passed to the ownership of the shopping centre. But the economic climate at the moment will not see phase 2 happen immediately, but hopefully it will do so. Now there's the goods shed from the 1850s within the scheme. Now, I mentioned balancing objectives. Well, what are they? Land use objectives. The planning authority's desire for a genuinely mixed-use development, balanced against the residential amenity concerns, because there is a housing element to this. Urban design objectives, a desire to gain new public spaces suitable for a variety of events. And I put in events there because I think we can have good design and good spaces created, but if there isn't something going on in them, they'll still remain fairly dead and sterile. So there's an art to making things happen in these places. And certainly in the UK, it would be normal for a town to have a town centre manager whose very job it is to organise things like that in the best places. Now, orientation and shelter are the crucial factors there, as we'll see. Conservation objectives, respect for the character of the structures and their setting, hopefully, but balance that against this is to be a new place for people to live, people to work and to shop. In terms of viability for a developer, well, that's obvious, but I put in there security and control. At the end of the whole process, what became apparent was that going into the future, the owner needs to be able to control this place. I suppose he wants to lock it up and go home to bed at night and sleep easy. Whereas for the planners, the sacred cow of permeability and people being able to wander at will all over the place is attractive, but that is anathema really to something like a shopping centre developer. If you can make out there, in green is what was left of the workhouse. The government offices are behind it there, and also the goods shed. The centre it wraps itself around these buildings, and the two main spaces are formed by the historic structures. Phase 2 will involve taking over the redundant tracks and aligning the goods shed on axis with St John's Church, which is across the street. And you will have then an axial entrance into the shopping centre, which it doesn't have at the moment, which will be a much better thing, and open up Goods Shed Square to better effect as well. Now let's go in. This is the vehicular entrance off the Dublin Road. You go under the live tracks. There are 2 decks of underground car parking. As a pedestrian, having come up John Street from the city centre, you can go under the now redundant tracks, passing the terminal there, the old terminal on the left, which is now in retail use and office above. And phase 2 will be here on the right. Now, Goods Shed Square is flanked by these 2 drums of apartment buildings, and it is the backdrop to what's termed Goods Shed Square. Now, I think this is a very good space. The orientation, as you can see there, is southerly. I think it'll be very suitable for a variety of activities. It's to be complemented in due course by a cinema and a cinema and a hotel. Sorry, cinema and a hotel, which will incorporate the other arches to match these of the old railway platform wall.